The date is August 25, 2026. New York City. The USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center is buzzing with anticipation. The US Open, the final Grand Slam of the year, is just days away. And the tennis world is about to witness something no one expected. Alexandra Eala, the 21-year-old Filipino sensation who has taken the tennis world by storm, has arrived in New York. And she has brought her army of fans with her. The Filipino community, which has followed her across North America, has traveled to New York in record numbers. The stadiums are expected to be filled with red, white, and blue, with flags waving and voices chanting her name. But as Eala prepares for her US Open debut, a warning has been issued that has sent shockwaves through the tennis world. Patrick McEnroe, the former world number 3 doubles champion and ESPN analyst, has delivered a stark warning to the US Open organizers. The USTA better make sure they put her on big courts. He has warned them not to make the same mistake that was made at the Australian Open, where Eala was scheduled on a small court and thousands of fans were turned away. He has urged them to recognize her star power, and he has warned that if they don't, they will regret it. Face screaming in fear Philippines. Before the warning, there was the phenomenon. Alexandra Eala's rise to stardom has been nothing short of miraculous. She had started her career as a promising young player from a country with virtually no tennis infrastructure. The Philippines had never produced a tennis star of her caliber. But by 2026, Eala had become the first Filipino, man or woman, to win a WTA Tour singles event. She had defeated world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the Washington final, a victory that catapulted her into the global spotlight. She had reached the 4th round of Wimbledon, defeating defending champion Iga Swiatek on center court. She had climbed to a career-high number 18 in the world. The Philippines had never seen anything like it. But Eala's influence extended far beyond the tennis court. She had become the biggest draw in women's tennis, perhaps in all of tennis. In Toronto, she sold out stadiums. In Cincinnati, tickets for her matches vanished in hours. The Filipino community had turned out in full force, creating an atmosphere that even the most experienced players found overwhelming. The Eala effect was real. It was powerful, and it was about to take over New York. Eala's popularity had grown so much that she had become one of the hottest properties in women's tennis. According to industry estimates, she was now earning approximately $10 million per year in sponsorship income. She had landed major sponsorship deals with Nike, Babolat, Globe Telecom, Bank of the Philippine Islands, Milo Philippines, Locally Juice, and most recently, Marriott Bonvoy. Her commercial potential was reminiscent of the Emma Raducanu effect after her US Open victory in 2021. But Eala's reach was even more global. She represented a nation of 115 million people and a massive diaspora spread across the world. And that diaspora had descended on New York. The Eala effect had been building for months. Everywhere she went, crowds followed. In Toronto, the tournament director Carl Hale had been stunned by what he witnessed. "We've never seen anything like that in Toronto before. It was unexpected," Hale said. "Every match, she played it sold out. This year we saw hundreds and thousands of flags." The same thing happened in Cincinnati. The Filipino community had turned out in full force, turning the Lindner Family Tennis Center into what felt like a home court for the Filipina star. Now, New York was next, and Patrick McEnroe wanted to make sure the organizers were ready. Eala's journey to this moment had been shaped by the sacrifices of her family, the support of her nation, and her own unyielding determination. She had moved to Spain at 13, leaving behind everything familiar to chase a dream. She had trained for hours every day, honing her craft, perfecting her strokes. She had faced defeats that would have crushed lesser spirits, but she had always gotten back up. She had studied the game, analyzed her opponents, and developed a style that was uniquely her own. It was a style that relied not on brute force, but on intelligence, on the ability to read the game and outthink her opponents. Now, she was on the verge of her biggest challenge yet, and the tennis world was watching. Before we dive into the warning, you must first understand who Patrick McEnroe is. The younger brother of tennis legend John McEnroe, Patrick carved out his own successful career in the sport. He reached a career-high world number 3 in doubles and won the 1989 French Open mixed doubles title. He also captained the U.S. Davis Cup team for a decade, leading them to the title in 2007. Since retiring, he has become a respected ESPN analyst, known for his sharp insights and his ability to spot talent. McEnroe has been watching Eala's rise with keen interest. He has analyzed her game, her mentality, and her potential. He has seen her defeat Iga Swiatek at Wimbledon. He has seen her win her first WTA title in Washington. He has seen her sell out stadiums in Toronto and Cincinnati. And he has come to a conclusion: Alexandra Eala is the real deal. McEnroe's warning was not just idle speculation. It was based on years of experience and a deep understanding of the game. He has seen players come and go. He has seen talent wasted and potential squandered. But he sees something different in Eala. He sees a player with the talent, the work ethic, and the star power to become one of the biggest names in the sport. McEnroe's warning was also a reflection of his respect for the Filipino community. He recognized that Eala was not just a tennis player. She was a phenomenon. She was bringing new fans to the sport, fans who were passionate, dedicated, and willing to travel thousands of miles to support her. He understood that the U.S. Open organizers needed to recognize that power, and he was not afraid to speak his mind. McEnroe's brother, John, had also been vocal about Eala's rise, and Patrick's warning was a continuation of the family's recognition of her star power. The McEnroe brothers had seen the future of tennis, and they knew it was Eala. McEnroe's warning was not a hypothetical scenario. It was based on a real mistake that had been made at the Australian Open earlier in the year. Eala's first-round match against American Alycia Parks had been scheduled on Court 6, a modest 2,800-seat venue. The scenes were chaotic. Thousands of fans had gathered, but most were turned away. The queues stretched for hundreds of meters. Security was overwhelmed. It was a logistical nightmare. The Australian Open had underestimated the Eala effect. They had failed to recognize her star power, and they had paid the price. The organizers had been forced to scramble, trying to find a solution. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The fans were angry. The media was critical, and the tournament had been left red-faced. The Australian Open's failure to accommodate Eala's fans had been a major embarrassment. It had been a lesson in the importance of recognizing star power, and McEnroe wanted to make sure the U.S. Open didn't make the same mistake. Lindsay Davenport, the former world number one, had experienced the chaos firsthand. "I just wanted to go see Alycia Parks play," Davenport said. "You weren't getting anywhere near that court. There were so many fans who were just waiting to get in there." Davenport also noted that Eala was probably the most famous female from the Philippines, certainly one of the most famous people ever to come through their sporting world. The Australian Open was a cautionary tale for the U.S. Open organizers. McEnroe wanted to make sure they didn't make the same mistake. He wanted them to recognize Eala's star power. He wanted them to put her on the big courts. And he wanted them to avoid the chaos that had unfolded in Melbourne. The U.S. Open had its own history of fan-related issues that made McEnroe's warning even more relevant. The tournament had seen its share of chaotic scenes, especially when popular players were involved. In 2025, the U.S. Open had been forced to issue a warning to fans about court etiquette and capacity limits after several matches had been overrun by enthusiastic crowds. The tournament had also faced criticism for its scheduling decisions, with some matches being placed on smaller courts despite the popularity of the players involved. The U.S. Open organizers had learned from some of these mistakes. They had invested in more seating. They had improved their security protocols. They had recognized the importance of star power. But McEnroe's warning was a reminder that they still had work to do. Eala was a different kind of star. She was not just a popular player. She was a phenomenon. She had a fan base that was passionate, dedicated, and willing to travel thousands of miles to support her. The U.S. Open needed to be ready for her. The U.S. Open had also faced criticism in the past for not recognizing the potential of new stars. In 2022, they had been criticized for not giving Emma Raducanu a bigger court for her first-round match. The mistake had been costly, and the tournament had been forced to scramble to accommodate the flood of fans. McEnroe's warning was a reminder that the U.S. Open needed to be proactive, not reactive. They needed to put Eala on the big courts from the start. McEnroe's warning was not just his own opinion. It was supported by other tennis legends. Martina Navratilova, the 18-time Grand Slam champion, had also urged tournament organizers to be wiser when scheduling Eala's matches. The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is here, Navratilova said. because there's massive Filipino audience in Melbourne, in Australia. So keep that in mind next time you make the schedule. Navratilova's words were a validation of McEnroe's warning. She understood the power of the Filipino community. She understood the passion of Eala's fans. And she understood that the tournament organizers needed to adapt. The same sentiment applied to New York, where there is a massive Filipino community in Woodside, Queens, nicknamed Little Manila. Navratilova's endorsement of the warning added weight to McEnroe's words. It was not just one analyst speaking. It was a chorus of legends calling for change. Navratilova had also praised Eala's game, calling her a whole new craze in Southeast Asia and the Philippines. She had recognized that Eala was not just a tennis player. She was a phenomenon, and she believed that the organizers needed to recognize that power. Her endorsement of McEnroe's warning was a sign that the tennis world was taking Eala seriously. Navratilova had also urged the Australian Open organizers to learn from their mistakes, saying, "The players have no idea this is happening. Kudos to the fans. The players have no idea this is happening." Her words were a reminder that the fans were the heart of the sport, and that the organizers needed to respect their passion. Lindsay Davenport's first-hand experience at the Australian Open was a powerful example of the Eala effect. The former world #1 had wanted to watch Eala's match against Alycia Parks, but she couldn't get anywhere near the court. "I just wanted to go see Alycia Parks play," Davenport said. "You weren't getting anywhere near that court. There were so many fans who were just waiting to get in there." Davenport's experience was a testament to the passion of Eala's fans. They had traveled from across Australia to support her. They had filled the stands. They had created an atmosphere that even the most experienced players found overwhelming. Davenport was impressed by the dedication of the fans. She also noted that Eala was probably the most famous female from the Philippines, certainly one of the most famous people ever to come through their sporting world. Davenport's experience was a warning to the US Open organizers. They needed to be prepared for the flood of fans. They needed to put Eala on the big courts, and they needed to recognize the power of the Filipino community. Davenport's words were a powerful endorsement of McEnroe's warning. She had seen it firsthand. She knew what was coming, and she wanted the US Open to be ready. Davenport had also noted that the atmosphere at Eala's matches was unlike anything she had ever seen. "I've been around tennis for 25-plus years," she said. "I don't think I've ever seen anything like what Alex Eala is doing with the fans. It is truly remarkable." Mary Jo Fernandez, the three-time Grand Slam singles finalist and ESPN analyst, also backed up McEnroe's advice. "Yeah, it's remarkable," Fernandez said. "I experienced it last year in Miami when she played there. Her following, the fans that just come to watch her not just play her match, but to watch her practice, is off the charts. It's just gotten bigger and bigger everywhere she goes." Fernandez noted that even watching Eala on TV, you could feel the energy. When she won in D.C., when she played in Canada, it's almost like she's playing a Billie Jean King Cup match when she's out there. Every point is loud. Every point she wins, it feels like she's won more than a point. It's remarkable. Fernandez also highlighted that Eala's game backs up the hype. Another opportunity, a big star to highlight. By the way, her game's really good. She backs it up. She's improved tremendously, I think, in the last 12 months when we saw her break through. She's getting better and better. The consensus among tennis experts was clear. Eala is not just a popular player. She is a talented player who deserves to be on the biggest stages. And the US Open organizers would be foolish to ignore her star power. Fernandez had also noted that the energy Eala's fans bring to the sport is a positive thing for tennis. "It's great for tennis," she said. "It's great for the sport. It's great for the fans. It's great for everyone involved." The warning from McEnroe was not just about scheduling. It was about recognizing the power of the Filipino community. New York City is home to one of the largest Filipino populations in the United States. The neighborhood of Woodside in Queens has been nicknamed Little Manila because of its large Filipino community. They are expected to turn out in full force for Eala's matches at the US Open. They will fill the stadiums. They will wave their flags. And they will create an atmosphere that will be electric. The Filipino community has a long history of supporting their athletes. When Manny Pacquiao fought, the streets of Los Angeles and Las Vegas were filled with Filipino fans. When Hidilyn Diaz won the Olympic gold medal, the Philippines erupted in celebration. And now, it was Eala's turn. The Filipino community in New York was ready to rally behind their hero. They had been following her journey across North America. They had filled stadiums in Toronto and Cincinnati. And now, they were ready to take over New York. The U.S. Open organizers needed to be ready for them. They needed to have enough security. They needed to have enough seating. And they needed to have enough space to accommodate the flood of fans. McEnroe's warning was a reminder that the Filipino community was a force to be reckoned with. And the U.S. Open would be wise to recognize that power. The Filipino community had already begun organizing on social media, planning watch parties, and coordinating travel arrangements. They were determined to make their presence felt at the U.S. Open, and the organizers needed to be ready for them. The Eala effect had already been felt in the ticket sales for the U.S. Open. According to reports, tickets for Eala's first-round match had sold out within hours of being released. The demand had been so high that the U.S. Open had been forced to release additional tickets to meet the demand. The tournament had also seen a surge in ticket sales for the second week of the tournament, as fans anticipated Eala making a deep run. The ticket sales were a reflection of Eala's growing popularity. She was not just a tennis player. She was a phenomenon. She was attracting fans who had never watched tennis before. She was bringing new energy to the sport, and she was making the U.S. Open a must-see event. The ticket sales were also a reminder of the commercial potential of the Eala effect. The U.S. Open was benefiting from Eala's star power, and the organizers needed to recognize that potential. The U.S. Open had also seen a surge in merchandise sales. Eala's Nike shirt had sold out within minutes of being released. Her other merchandise was flying off the shelves. The tournament was making millions of dollars from Eala's popularity, and the organizers needed to recognize that value. The Eala effect was not just about ticket sales. It was about the entire economic ecosystem of the tournament, and the U.S. Open needed to be ready to capitalize on it. The question on everyone's mind was whether the U.S. Open organizers would listen to McEnroe's warning. The USTA had been criticized in the past for its scheduling decisions. The Australian Open debacle was a reminder of what could happen when organizers underestimated the Eala effect. But the USTA had also shown that it could learn from its mistakes. It had made changes to its scheduling policies. It had invested in more seating. It had recognized the importance of star power. The USTA had also seen the success of Eala's matches in Toronto and Cincinnati. They had seen the packed stadiums, the passionate fans, and the electric atmosphere. They knew what Eala could bring to the tournament, and they knew that they needed to be ready. The question was whether they would be bold enough to put Eala on the big courts, whether they would recognize her star power, and whether they would avoid the mistakes of the past. The tennis world was watching. The fans were waiting. And the U.S. Open organizers were facing a decision that could define the tournament. McEnroe's warning was a call to action, and the organizers needed to respond. The U.S. Open had already made some changes in response to the warning. They had upgraded Eala's court assignment. They had added extra seating for her matches. But it remained to be seen whether these changes would be enough. The pressure was on the organizers to get it right, and the tennis world was watching. The players on the tour had also been watching Eala's rise with interest. Many of them had commented on her popularity and her game. Jessica Pegula, who had lost to Eala in the Washington final, had said, "She's a great player. She's going to be a star." Coco Gauff had also praised Eala, saying, "She's a great player. She's going to be a star." The players recognized Eala's talent and her potential. Some players had also commented on the atmosphere at Eala's matches. Naomi Osaka had described Eala's matches as being more like a basketball game than a tennis match, referring to the electric atmosphere. Iga Swiatek had said that the noise at Eala's matches was unbelievable. The players were impressed by the passion of Eala's fans, and they knew that playing against Eala was a unique experience. The players also recognized the commercial potential of the Eala effect. They knew that Eala was bringing new fans to the sport. They knew that she was making tennis more popular, and they knew that she was helping to grow the game. The players' perspective on Eala was a reflection of her impact on the sport. She was not just a popular player. She was a transformative player. She was changing the game. The media had also been obsessed with Eala. She had been featured on the cover of Forbes. She had been named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list. She had been featured in Vogue Philippines. She had been interviewed by major media outlets around the world. The media had recognized the commercial potential of the Eala effect. They knew that Eala was a story that people wanted to read about. and they were capitalizing on her popularity. The media coverage of Eala had been mostly positive. Journalists had praised her talent, her humility, and her grace. They had recognized the significance of her achievements, and they had celebrated her success. But there had also been some criticism. Some journalists had questioned whether Eala was being overhyped. They had wondered whether she could live up to the expectations, and they had been skeptical about her potential. Despite the criticism, the media's obsession with Eala had only grown stronger. She was a captivating story. She was a symbol of hope for millions of Filipinos, and she was a force for change in the sport of tennis. The media was right to be obsessed with her, and the world was watching. The media's coverage of Eala had also helped to raise her profile. It had made her a household name, and it had helped to make the US Open a must-see event. The media was a key part of the Eala effect, and the US Open needed to recognize that power. The US Open had a golden opportunity to capitalize on the Eala effect. Eala was the biggest story in tennis. She was bringing new fans to the sport. She was generating massive media attention, and she was making the tournament a must-see event. The US Open needed to recognize that opportunity. They needed to put Eala on the big courts. They needed to promote her matches, and they needed to capitalize on her star power. The US Open had the chance to make history. They had the chance to be the tournament that launched Eala into superstardom. They had the chance to be the tournament that showed the world the power of the Eala effect. And they had the chance to be the tournament that proved that tennis was a global sport. The US Open organizers needed to seize the opportunity. They needed to be bold. They needed to be innovative. And they needed to recognize the power of the Eala effect. The US Open had already made some changes in response to the warning. They had upgraded Eala's court assignment. They had added extra seating for her matches. But there was still more that could be done. The organizers needed to be proactive. They needed to anticipate the demand. And they needed to be ready for the flood of fans. The US Open had the chance to make history, and they needed to seize it. The fans' reaction to McEnroe's warning was immediate and emotional. Social media flooded with messages of support and pride. The hashtag Ealamania trended worldwide. Fans from the Philippines, the United States, and around the world shared their excitement and pride. "This is incredible," one fan wrote. "Alexandra Eala is not just a tennis player. She is a symbol of hope for millions of Filipinos. This is proof that the world recognizes her greatness." Another fan posted, "She is the princess of the Philippines. I'm so proud to be Filipino." The Filipino community was particularly moved. They saw McEnroe's warning as a recognition of their culture and their identity. "This is proof that the whole world is watching Alex," one fan wrote. "She is not just our pride. She is the world's pride." The reaction was a testament to the power of representation. Eala had shown the world that Filipinos could compete on the global stage, that Filipinos could succeed, that Filipinos could be champions. The fans' reaction was also a reminder of the bond between Eala and her supporters. She had always been grateful for their support. She had always acknowledged their role in her success. And now, they were celebrating her success as if it were their own. McEnroe's warning was not just a victory for Eala. It was a victory for the entire Philippines. And the world was watching. The fans were ready to fill the stadiums. They were ready to wave their flags. And they were ready to cheer Eala on to victory. The US Open organizers needed to be ready for them. Patrick McEnroe's warning was more than just a moment. It was a promise that the tennis world was ready for a new generation of stars. A promise that Eala was on the right path. A promise that her journey was far from over. Eala's journey from the cracked courts of Quezon City to the bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium had been nothing short of miraculous. She had overcome challenges that would have broken lesser players. She had faced injuries, setbacks, and doubts. She had remained humble, grounded, and grateful. And she had inspired millions of Filipinos around the world to dream big. The tennis world is watching. The fans are believing. And Alexandra Eala is just getting started. From the cracked courts of Quezon City to the sold-out stadiums of Toronto and Cincinnati. From the cover of Forbes to the bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium. Her journey has defied every expectation. This is not the end. This is only the beginning.